Hello everyone and welcome back to Get Educated with DylanMarie. Travel Edition, Maui. As we start this adventure, my goal is to not only dive into the beauty of this paradise, but also into the island and the history of its people. A history that goes back over 2,000 years. Maui and its surrounding islands, like many places in the world, has its own fair share of mighty rulers. Rulers who were not only revered for their accomplishments, but feared by their rivals, and gained power with both diplomatic and brutal force. Earliest records show Polynesians began settling the islands between the years of 300 and 800 AD. This was the time of great voyagers. Yes, like Moana. And for thousands of years, settlements began developing on many of the islands, including Maui. By the 1700s, families and traditions were well established, each with their own villages and chiefs. And like most kings and chiefs, when it comes to land and power, I want it all! The more the merrier. And I want it now! Which made battles quite frequent. On the main island of Hawaii is where our story begins. And like many stories, it begins with the birth of a great king, who would, within one lifetime, unite the warring islands under one kingdom. King Kamehameha, the Battle of Iao Valley, and the uniting of the islands. At the time of his birth in 1758, Halley's Comet flew across the sky, and with that came a prophecy which told of a newborn child, son of the king's niece, who would grow to become a usurper and slayer of chiefs. Of course, this put him in immediate danger from the moment of his birth, so naturally, his mother sent him into hiding, and he remained there until the age of 5 years old, when the superstition had diminished and her uncle had vowed for the young boy's safety. However, as the boy grew, he began to show great mana, or spiritual life force, and before long he grew to an incredible 7 feet tall and was well known for his intelligence and strength. Many feared the prophecy would soon come true. Years passed, and when the chief became old and ill, he began to delegate who would take over areas of the kingdom. To his oldest son, he passed on his title of Ali'i, or chief, as well as the power over 3 of the districts. He then, however, did something quite surprising. When the king decided to give the responsibilities of the last district to none other but Kamehameha. The one once prophesied to be a chief slayer not only had control over a district, but was granted the title Guardian of the War God, a powerful religious position. And as many predicted, shortly after the king's death, Kamehameha began a war against his cousin, ending with Kamehameha's victory and the death of the new Ali'i. Kamehameha now had power over the entire northwest side of Hawaii and claimed himself king of the island. He even married his dead cousin's daughter for good measure. Ew. Guess it was a thing back then no matter where you were.
Targaryens wed brothers and sisters for 300 years to keep bloodlines pure.
What?
That's just wrong.
But, like all kings, one island was not enough to fill the power post. And Kamehameha foresaw a stronger nation if all the islands were under one king's rule. His rule. His sights were first set on Maui, but before he could go claim another island, he first had to take the rest of his own from that rebellious family of his, the ones that escaped when he killed his cousin. Kamehameha tried and failed, and tried and failed, and tried and failed quite a few times, each time learning new things. But the biggest thing Kamehameha realized, if it was difficult to take his own island, he would need some help if he was going to take all of the islands. And being the brilliant human Kamehameha was, he knew exactly where to find it.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
A few years earlier, in 1778, Captain James Cook.
I'll get you for this, man!
No. not Hook, Cook, came to the island of Hawaii while on his travels to map the South Pacific. And it was here that he eventually met his demise. And along with the diseases and unnecessary slaughter he and his men brought to the islands, they also brought a great deal of advanced weaponry. And why is this tidbit of information important to the story? Well, after an altercation between some locals of the island and a couple American vessels, Kamehameha found himself in possession of 2 American hostages, Isaac Davis and John Young. Seeing the benefit in their knowledge, rather than killing them, the king offered them 2 choices: join his court to become ambassadors, or meet their demise. Isaac and John, of course, chose the path of least death and began aiding the king in his strategy to take the islands. Now, Kamehameha was fascinated with the power of gunpowder. And with the help of his new advisors, they created their first war canoes with cannons. With these new weapons, and Maui's king being away after recently conquering Oahu, and left his son, Kalani in charge, Kamehameha knew this was the best chance that he had of taking the island and trying out his new weaponry. So Kamehameha and 18,000 of his best warriors launched their newly made war canoes and began their siege to Maui. And here, in the beautiful Iao Valley, came the bloodiest battle the island had ever seen. Kalani met Kamehameha's forces in the narrow mouth of the valley. This was a strong and well-known tactic of the Maui warriors. For to be able to take the island, the Hawaiian warriors had to get through the valley first. The Maui warriors held off the attackers for 3 long, bloody, brutal days until the arrival of the American ambassadors, who brought with them cannons on wheels, and they began firing them directly into the mouth of the valley, falling upon the Maui warriors. This would come to be known as the Battle of Damned Waters. Not this kind of damned.
The power of Christ compels you.
Does it, Jay?
This kind of damned. Except for instead of wood, it was the bodies of the Maui soldiers. As the bodies fell, they began to stack on top of each other, turning the river red with blood. Kalani was able to escape this battle and fled to his father in Oahu. It seemed Kamehameha was going to take Maui after all. But 3 days of battle is a lot for any army, and his was pretty depleted itself. Not to mention, back home, that cousin he hadn't dealt with yet, well, he was starting to stir up some trouble, and so Maui would have to wait. Kamehameha went back to Hawaii, where he defeated his cousin and eventually took the island of Maui in 1795. He achieved his goal of conquering and uniting all of the islands in 1810. Within one lifetime, King Kamehameha the Great was able to unite all of the islands under one king's rule, and within his rule, created one of the top trading markets in the Pacific Ocean. He even came up with the idea behind the Hawaiian flag, but that's for a later video. While you're visiting Maui, I highly recommend taking a journey up Iao Valley. As of now, this is a free place to explore for anyone who wants to visit. You can even take a walk in the magical waters. So please make sure you take care of it. Don't take anything from the valley that doesn't belong to you, and don't leave anything that does. Take care of it, or Pele will come for you. If you don't believe me, Google it. All right, guys, that is the rundown on Iao Valley. I'll see you next time as we explore underwater and surf with the turtles and sea life of Maui. Make sure that you hit subscribe, like, and turn on those notifications. This is DylanMarie signing out. Stay educated, and I'll see you guys all soon.
Go!